Welcome to the On Point podcast. I'm Rod Milicevic, and this is where we meet people who work in and around the built environment sector. We share ideas and experiences and hopefully get some insight into best practice, how things are changing through technology and ever-increasing calls to sustainability. If you're a building owner or manager or contractor, or just someone working in the sector or have an interest in, there must be something of value for you here. We'd love to hear your comments, suggestions for guests, and yes, you may well be one of them one day. So please subscribe, drop us a message, and more importantly, enjoy and get informed. This week, I'm joined by Sarah Ives, a travel specialist who I've come across and saved my bacon on a few occasions. But I think it's going to be an interesting guest because I know that she's had a foray into property and construction. And today she obviously works in the luxury travel. And I know travel for many of us has been very difficult. And I think she'll bring some insight and hopefully some refreshing change to boring old construction. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rod. I'm so happy to be here today.
Tell us about, the thing that when we first started talking, you mentioned you was in property at some point. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I first started as an admin assistant to a director of a commercial property company in Chelsea, Cowan and Rudder, which is still going on the King's Road. And I basically started doing some of the viewings for him. It was a small company of 2-3 people, and we just really made a success of it. And I worked there for about 6 years and ended up associate director. So I had a great time there, and it was mainly commercial. Towards the end of my stay there, we were branching into residential in Chelsea Harbour.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. That was. I remember working on, when they were building sort of that whole Chelsea Harbour estate. In fact, I think one day we was working there, and I actually saw. This is at the time when Princess Di came out of the Harbour Club as well.
Oh, yeah. I had some funny ones when I was there because we had a sort of glass-fronted office right in the courtyard of where the design centre is. And I had, because the Chelsea players used to look around for flats there, the new ones. And I had John Terry walk in one day, and I knew nothing about football. So I was just like, oh, okay, who are you? What do you want to see? Why are you interrupting me on my lunch break? And then I showed him a few places, and after that, it was like, oh, that was John Terry. Oh, wow.
So tell me, okay, so you've got some experience in property and probably at a high-end level, but now you're at high-end travel. Which do you prefer?
Well, I think they're both really similar, and I loved both. After doing commercial property, I went on to Sloane Avenue and worked for Chesterton's there, doing only residential sales, and that I absolutely loved. I just thought it was the best job ever, and I was really passionate about it. And travel is really similar to selling property to me. It's about matching your client to the perfect property or the perfect location. So it really ties in well. The on point thing is about, where's the potential, but there's something that I sometimes use with different clients, and I'm intrigued. What is it that you love about your job? I love meeting new people. It's something I've always loved. I'm very extroverted, and I love almost creating a magical experience for people. So similar to in property, it was finding someone that perfect flat and they were just moving in together, or finding someone a bigger house as they were having their second child. And for me, luxury travel is all about that. It's about the experience. It's about meeting new people. It's about helping people. And it's this joy when it goes well that you get just the most amazing feedback. And it's so nice. And I take all of my clients' trips probably a bit too personally as they fly away. I usually do itineraries on an app called Access Travel. And I have every client's trip in the app, and it pings when they're about to leave, and it gives me reminders and things like that. And I'm always like, oh, I hope they make it. And I think I did this to you too. Like, text me when you're on the plane. And I thought, oh, poor Rod, he doesn't even know me from Adam, and I'm asking him to text me when he gets on the plane.
I think that's really. I mean, it sort of leads into what I was going to ask you. Like, what advice would you give customers? Because sometimes you have to tell guide the customer how to be the perfect client so they can save
Yeah.
themselves some money. And I think what you just said there. I mean, I've always been a lastminute.com. When people say to me, "Let's book for even 3 months ahead," it's just like something. I'm allergic to it. I love the fact that I can wake up one morning and go, next week I'm going wherever, but actually because of the way the travel has been, and I think a lot of the bigger tour operators and flight companies, airlines have made this flexibility so that you can still have a little bit of both. So you can have that sort of lastminute.com. I'll have some influence on when I'm going to travel, but at the same time, I think it's important to have something booked in, so something to look forward to, because I think that's just good for the soul when you've got something to look forward to.
Absolutely. And you're one of my favorite clients ever. I've never had a 10 p.m. call. We want to fly in 24 hours. Where can we go and what do we need to do? It was one of the challenges of my year that I loved the most. That was brilliant. I'm so glad we pulled it out of the bag too, and you had a great time.
Yeah, no, you did it with aplomb. So,
But I do say that to people about, I would just say my advice would be definitely speak to a travel agent, because you might find that you can, get a better deal on booking.com. It's normally not that way. I mean, normally we're the same price as you would find online, but I think the extra help that you get and the extra hand holding, especially now, is worth it 100%. And I think just in terms of that, if you have bucket list destinations that say you're desperate to go to Vegas, or you're desperate to go to Indonesia, or I know for you it's Australia, and I think for those kind of trips, it's good to plan something flexible ahead and wait and see.
great advice. Great advice. So, the show's really about being on point, and the point is an acronym for, it's usually about where's the potential, opportunity, impact, needs, and transformation points within an industry. I don't know. I get this feeling that you probably have a lot to say about the industry. I mean, I'd ask you first, maybe I don't know, maybe a touching subject, but travel and sustainability and carbon and the planet. How good is it really? Is the airline industry? It gets a lot of sticks for all the carbon that we're putting out, and that it's not doing a lot to save the planet. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's carbon offsetting for your flights. If that was something that was sustainable travel was a big thing, and that is something that we are definitely seeing now. That clients want sustainable travel, and they want to go to hotels and resorts that have eco credentials and are taking care of locals and taking care of the environment. They don't like plastic in the rooms. I mean, that's a big thing, and that's been going on for years, this kind of plastic warfare, where I recently stayed in a London hotel, and I think it's actually worse since COVID, where they wrap virtually the towels in plastic. The company that I work for, Cartology Travel, is part of something called the Conscious Travel Foundation as well, which is a community which brings together people in the travel industry to reshape the impact of tourism on the world. So it's basically looking for places that have sustainability credentials. And that has been really important for some of my clients. And one of the big things as well is supporting local economies, which I think does make a very big difference and probably offsets a lot of the negative aspects of travel. Over during COVID, when we weren't able to travel to Africa and Africa was shut, there was a lot more poaching of in, the game reserves. And that was because there was not the demand for the guides and the rangers and the local economy that they needed to basically keep these communities going. So I think travel in that sense brings a lot of good to the world.
Okay, so what's the potential for change then? If you're in charge of, I don't know, global travel and you're sitting down with the mayor, where's the potential? What would you implement?
I would just say clear guidance. So I would say if you're vaccinated, you can go where you want. You take a test before you go. If they allow you in, great. If they don't, you can't go there. On the way back, you have a test. And if you need to have another test, fine. But to me, it seems like it's quite protected at the moment for vaccinated travelers. You have your double vaccine. Even if you get COVID, the chances are quite low that you'll get gravely ill with it, and you're tested and the tests work. So I don't understand why we can't rely on them. Before you leave, you don't have it, and before you come back, you don't have it. So to me, it would just be saying, lifting all of the restrictions and saying you test, even if they had to. I mean, because right now the rules don't make that much sense. You're doing the same thing in Croatia, which is green, as you're doing in Spain, which is amber. And the only difference is when you come back from amber, you have to pay for a test and then leave it at a drop box, and they don't even get back to you. I mean, my recent day 2 tests, it was Randox. I know they're getting a lot of sort of shtick on Twitter, but it was 5 days before they got back to me to tell me my test was negative. So it doesn't, to me, it's a flawed system. And I know both of us like a little conspiracy, but I'm always a bit like, what are these kind of constant tests about? I mean, I get it. Before you go, you take a test. Before you come back, you take a test. But what is the point of a day 2 test if you've just been tested 4 days before? But I'm not a scientist, so maybe there is some logic in it.
Yeah. Okay. What about the opportunity? What new opportunities would you see out there? I mean, what are the maybe even start with your business. What are the opportunities that I mean, I've just given you a gem, which is luxury
Yeah,
travel.
thank you. All right. You're going to help me with the funding behind this, right?
Absolutely.
Let's do it together. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
No, it is a really good idea. And that is basically where I want to go with my business. I want to be your go-to concierge for anything and everything. So if you need a restaurant booking, if you need a private jet, if you want to charter a yacht, if you want to do basically anything you want to do, I should know somebody who knows how to do it, even if I don't. So that's kind of where I see my business.
What's the bigger impact of travel? What's the bigger impact of what you do? What's what would you encourage people to do more of? Obviously travel, but how does it impact society? Do you think?
Yeah, well, I think this is the big question because it's with the current global situation. How does, how does travel move forward? Because I think that there has been quite a lot of negative PR about travel over the last year in terms of you're selfish if you want to get away, which we'd already seen prior to COVID because there was a strong message that carbon emissions and flying was bad and all of these sort of messages that we were hearing before. And then during COVID, it became more you're a walking potential virus and you're willing to take these variants to other countries and things like that. And I think part of that is part of the future of travel is going to have to incorporate these things. So it's going to be, how is it that how does travel impact the environment and how are we trying to remedy it? I mean, I read the biggest source of climate change was actually eating meat and fish and not at all plastic or airline emissions, but I don't know if that's
No,
totally
no, no.
true or
Well, no, certainly. When you think how much ground space cows take, and
yeah.
and you're like, well, the whole methane thing and everything else. Look, who knows? I mean, I wonder whether there's an argument. Can you see virtual travel? Can you see people,
Well,
like putting on headsets and?
I mean, I really hope not, but I have watched all the Black Mirrors, so I think it could be possible. I think anything's possible now. I hope you've watched Black Mirror, have
Yeah, yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
knew it. But it was brilliant, actually. But I had some interesting calls over lockdown. One was with an Africa specialist who was aiming to create virtual safari experiences, mainly to keep the guides in work during lockdown and when we couldn't travel there. So what they were doing is saying you could get your family together maybe for a 500 or 800 pounds, and we could take you on a guided tour, basically, of, we could take you on a virtual safari, and then you're contributing to the, livelihood of the park rangers and
Great
all the
idea.
guides. And it was a great idea. I mean, I think the technology is probably there or will be very soon, but, I mean, I would say I hope that we can find a way to make the PR around travel a little bit more positive, where we're realizing that travel isn't just about holidays either. It's about mental health, it's about seeing family, and it's about a million other things, really. It's about supporting local economies. So I think one of the things that needs to change is the rhetoric that people are just selfish, going off on five-star all-inclusive kind of nonstop cocktail and eating kind of fest. And that, of course, you're welcome to do that. But I think that there are also a lot of other reasons that people travel, and that it's really important for the economy too.
Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned Australia, and they're losing something. I don't know whether it's a billion a day or billion a week, as a result of how badly prepared they've been for lockdown and the whole COVID thing. So these if we don't travel, it does affect. I mean, we've been affected in the UK, by visitors not coming in from abroad, and all the little retailers that are really dependent on tourists, are
Oh,
affected.
yeah.
I've spoken to at least two cabbies that have just packed up their the knowledge and just said, like, there's just not enough here. We've already got Uber and other services, and it's just not enough for everyone to go around. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's it. And it's maybe saying that you travel less, but you travel higher quality. So instead of traveling 5 or 6 times a year, maybe you travel once or twice a year, but you combine your spend and do something where you can really contribute to the local economy, and you have a bit of an adventure and you get to know another place, or, less kind of just maybe say flying off whenever you feel like it, and you can make that decision as to, because I've definitely seen some clients do that instead, where they'd normally do a sort of Easter beach break, but instead they've decided to do a longer stay, where, because the other thing is, when you're traveling with taking these tests and the flight, it's almost like it gets not worth it for 2 nights or 3 nights.
yeah.
It becomes like it's such a faff. Just go, really relax, really unwind, and then kind of at the end of it, you have to deal with the bath again, but you're coming home. So I've definitely seen that the shorter stays have been in the UK. And then the kind of average stay for me this summer has been around 14 nights.
I've already heard this year people saying, "No, I'm going for 3 or 4 weeks," which is unheard of. It's like
Yeah.
when I grew up, we would always go away for 6 weeks, and
Wow.
and it was just one of those things, because we'd go back. Originally my parents are from Yugoslavia, and which has now been broken up. But you drive there, so you drive through Europe and then settle down, and you'd have 4 or 5 weeks, and then you'd sort of allow 3 or 4 days to go back. And I just think, like, it wasn't as if, and that was a sort of a norm. And a lot of families from Europe would do that. And the kids broke up, but we've become so accustomed to work, 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 and cram even more work in. In fact, I probably don't switch off when I go on holiday. I'm constantly on email, Maybe that's a need. Wherever you go, there has to be Wi-Fi. That's the one thing.
I've actually seen trends before COVID where people wanted to go somewhere where there was no Wi-Fi. So one of the places I went was off the coast of Zanzibar, an island called Pemba, and the Wi-Fi was just atrocious. And my husband says it was one of the best trips ever because we were just not able to go. We're not able to upload onto Instagram. We were not able to check our work emails unless we went to a specific place to do it. So that almost created because I'm like you, and I will just sit, on the sun lounger and just be WhatsApping all my clients or sort of talking and, and then you suddenly get to the end of the day and, like the kids are kind of slapping you in the face, like, pay attention to me. And you're like, sort of, but I think that's one thing that is a bit of a worry right now that I read a lot about is there is no delineation between work and home anymore. It's almost, we're allowed to work from home and we're supposed to work from home to some extent, but we're also not allowed to shut off because everyone knows we're at home.
Mm. Well, apart from the enlightened boss, which respects family time.
I know we need to do it. I think that's it because I find myself, I'm just like, I will check email sometimes right before bed, and it's so unhealthy. And it's like that is the one thing that I think if you at least took 2 weeks out of the 6, say you went away and you had the Wi-Fi, but you took a couple of days at least to not be connected. I think that's so important, and it's so hard. I can't. Anyone who can do it, I take my hat off to them, and I have to learn how to do it myself because I can't disconnect.
Yeah, I bet you're very active on Instagram, and it's it's easy to follow. It's informative, it's inspirational. So, and I think that's it. I think if you're working any one of these, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's TikTok or any of the social media platforms, you're going to do well. And I think if it's working well, then and that's probably. I was going to ask you, what's your transformational piece? But it sounds like that's probably what's
one of them. And now you've introduced me to Clubhouse as well, which I had on my phone for months, I think, and never used it. So you might have transformed another part of my business already.
Well, who knows? But I think definitely it's worked because I saw there are some travel people out there. But I mean, you've got so much to say. I mean, as we've covered a lot of ground here today, and you've got so much to say. And I think you're probably a thought leader in the travel industry. So I think you should continue to do that. You've certainly given me and the audience a lot to think about, and you've certainly whet the appetite for long distance travel. So yeah. I think
it will have to be Montenegro next for you, though.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've got it. That is on a long-term plan, and I think it probably be September. But it's we're just waiting for although there are people out there now.
Loads. So the new One and Only just opened, and that has been really popular. It's just so beautiful, and it's amber Montenegro, so we've got no problems. And Croatia's green, so you can fly into Croatia and drive about an hour and a half to get to.
Yeah.
It's an hour, right, or an hour and a half?
It's an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my next trip, I think.
Okay, well we'll have to time it.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I know the audience would have got some interesting points and some food for thought, and they've had their appetite whet.
And it was so great to speak to you. So I am sure this will not be our last conversation, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon.
Excellent. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Bye.